The class is MAC 2601. Principles of Management Accounting. Okay. I don't know if you attended last week's class. Anyone who attended?
No, I didn't attend.
Okay.
No, it's also my first class today.
It's your first class today?
Yes.
No. Yeah, fine. Okay. So welcome to MAC 2601. This is Principles of Management Accounting. Now, this module is going to form a very important foundation for your future studies. It will form a very important foundation for your future studies. In order for you to complete your degree, good people, definitely you have to get your principles right. If you are not going to have the relevant principles, you will suffer. You will suffer going forward. Okay. Okay, let me answer this person. Maybe it's failing to connect. Yes, Portia.
I follow Bula's the link.
Okay, I heard someone saying so. Okay, let me try to resend.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've been struggling.
Okay, let me try to resend.
All right, thank you.
All right, sure. All right, so this is the principles module. We need to know our principles. Okay, now we look at management accounting, good people. Now, when we look at this management accounting, principles of management accounting, okay, we are going to be looking at mainly the role of what management accountant, what does it look into, what is its functions. But you realize that mainly in this module, we are going to be dealing with what? Product costing. We are not going to look at serving cost, service, the costing of a service. We are going to look at how do we cost a product. It is very important, people, that we accumulate our cost correctly when costing our product, because it is from those costs that have been accumulated. It is on those costs that we have said they form part of the what cost of the product, that our selling price is going to be determined. So if we are going to get our cost wrong, it means that the selling price that we are going to levy in our to put out to our products there, they may not be what accurate. They may not be profitable. For instance, if I say calculate the cost of making maybe the pen that you are holding there, you have to pull together direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads. If you are going to get the cost wrong and say maybe I calculated my cost, they amounted to 15 Rand. When in actual fact, the cost of producing that item is 30 Rand. What will happen is that, good people, if you are now to sell that pen, if you accumulated your cost incorrectly as 15 Rand, you are going to be happy at selling that pen for 20 Rand and believe that you are making a profit of what? 5 Rand per pen. When in actual fact, you are making a loss of 10 Rand. So make sure that now when you are costing a product, you get your cost right. Be accurate. So this module, it identified the need to accurately cost our product. And then it is going to address that gap to say, if you are costing your product, make sure that you take into account the following costs in order to avoid undercosting your products, which can lead to underpricing your products. Are we together? Yes. So understand. Yes.
Yes.
So you realize that now, in most cases, or maybe 90% of the time, I am going to be talking about cost, product cost, because that's what the module is aimed to address product costing. So without wasting time, I would introduce you to product costs, because what the backbone of the module is product costing. And the backbone of the module must be learned on day one of the class, so that it's going to follow us all the way to our exam. Our minds are tuned in such a way that we tend to remember mostly the things that we did on day one than things that we did in subsequent classes. So day one, we are going to do the core of the module, which is product costing. All right. When we talk about product costing, good people, we need to consider the product costs. Now, what forms part of the product costs? Think about anything, a cell phone. If I'm to say, calculate the cost of the cell phone that you have there in your hand, this is what you're going to consider. You are going to consider what? The direct material cost. How much is the cost of the direct material? Those things that you can touch and feel. I don't know whether it's plastic, the one that forms part of the phone there. That plastic, that glass is referred to as direct material. So we are going to learn later on what is direct material. Direct material, this is the material that forms the major part of the product. It can be touched and felt. That rubber there that makes up your phone is referred to the direct material because you can touch it and feel it. The screen of a cell phone, it is also direct material. You can touch it and feel it. But let me not use a complicated example. I am going to run with this example with people. We are going to be looking at costing of a desk, the one that you're writing on. So in the case of a desk, the direct material is going to be those, that wood and those frames. Those ones, we can touch them and we can feel them. So if I'm to say, calculate the cost of that desk, you are going to determine what is the cost of this wood there on top? What is the cost of these frames? You might need the invoices for those wood and frames that they are actually said that were sent to us by the manufacturers. I will then put it down. And then the next thing I would say, let's consider the direct labor cost. The direct labor cost now, we are going to learn about, I'm going to give you notes about these things. What is this? What is that? What do we mean by direct labor cost? But direct labor cost, in a nutshell, we are referring to the wages that were paid to people who are directly involved in the manufacturing process. Directly involved in the manufacturing process. Now, in our example here, we are talking about the making of a desk. The persons that were directly involved in the making of a desk, people, it is going to be the carpenter. So we need to know the wages of a carpenter. Now, for those who are paid wages, good people, those people who operate in the factory, the assumption is that we pay them for the hours worked. So in determining the direct labor cost for the making of the desk, I will ask myself a question. How many hours did the carpenter work on this desk? And what is the rate for the carpenter per hour? I multiply the two, I'll get the direct labor cost of making a desk. Second, I am going to consider the manufacturing overheads. Manufacturing overheads. Right, for manufacturing overheads, people, we have got variable ones and we have got the fixed ones. As I introduce this module, I will just put one line there, manufacturing overheads, and so that I can conclude and say that there are three types of product costs, being direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads. But as we progress, I am going to split the manufacturing overheads into two, variable and fixed. Or allow me to do that immediately, because the distinction is going to be key going forward. When we talk about manufacturing overheads, some are going to be what? Variable, and some are going to be fixed. those two costs, you have to consider them and put them there. Identify their breakdown and put them there. Now, if I add this cost, 1, 2, 3 cost, I'll get my product cost. Okay, now let's talk about these manufacturing overheads. Now, when it comes to manufacturing overheads, good people, we are looking at indirect costs. For example, in the making of a desk, there are screws, right? There are screws that are used. There is glue that is used. So the cost of those screws and the cost of the glue that was used in the making of the desk, it is not going to be direct material because we cannot touch it, we cannot feel it. But it is the material that was used in the production process. And you realize that now the number of screws is going to vary with the number of desks produced. If one desk needs 4 screws, if we make 2 desks, we need 4 times 2. So the screws and the glue used in the making of a desk is going to be a variable manufacturing overhead. Right? Okay, now what about the fixed manufacturing overheads? When it comes to fixed manufacturing overheads, here we are looking at those overheads that are not going to vary with the output. They are not going to vary with the number of units produced. For instance, the salaries of supervisors, factory supervisors, the salary of a factory supervisor, it is fixed. It does not depend on the number of units produced. And another good example there, it is going to be a rental for your factory building. It is fixed, determined per month. Okay, so that's what you're going to be putting in there. But now you're going to realize that now, if I was costing one product here, good people, I need to put the portion that relates to one product or one unit. So for the wages of a supervisor, I might have to say, okay, wages of supervisor as well as rent, I might have to determine the monthly cost, then divide by the number of units that are produced in that month in order for me to allocate the cost to one unit. But I'm going to talk about the allocation of fixed manufacturing overheads to our product. It's going to be a topic of its own. Good people, when we talk about product costs, we are referring to manufacturing costs. Manufacturing costs, these are costs that are incurred in the factory. These are costs that are incurred in the factory. So when I say product cost, please give me the manufacturing cost. Please think about the costs that are incurred in the factory. Don't say the wages of a receptionist are a product cost. No, it doesn't work in the factory there. We want the costs that are going to emanate from the factory. All right, now we need to carry this with us, good people, all the way until we go and write, because that's our MAC. Okay. Okay, now we can, okay, know your product costs, and know how to cost a product. If I ask you to cost a product, pull together direct material cost, direct labor cost, and manufacturing overheads. Okay, that being said, can we move on to the next thing? The next thing, we are going to look at classification of costs. Right, as a management accountant, as a future management accountant, you must be in a position to classify your costs. You must be in a position to put your costs into different buckets. Now, the costs that we have, the cost of a company could be, well, are classified into, or they can be classified in terms of their origin or nature. They can be classified also in terms of their behavior our cost can also be classified into either product or period cost. Right, these are the buckets into which our cost can be classified into. All right, these are buckets into which our cost can be classified into. All right, is there anyone with the study guide there?
Yes.
You can share with us there. I also need it.
Oh, I need to download it on
You
the
have to
phone.
download it.
Yeah.
You don't have it handy. Let me see if I
You just
can.
have the physical one. I also don't have
Oh,
it. Yeah,
The
we've got
hard copy we don't have.
I have
the
the
soft
book.
copy.
Oh, you've got the book. I don't have the hard copy one.
You have the soft copy. So you can share with me the soft copy.
Okay, I will do it. I will do so.
Are you able to do that?
Now.
Yes. I want to share it with you there, guys. Does it take time?
Okay, you can continue outside to do it. You can continue with the lesson.
Okay, you don't take time there. I wanted to share so that we all see this as I explain it. I can wait for you to share. It won't take you time, right? You are taking it from where?
No, the thing is, it's not on my phone. It's on the laptop, but I'm using my phone for my class.
For your class.
Yes.
Okay. In the
Which
meantime,
page are you looking for, maybe?
the page number. Let's go to classification of courses there.
Because I can also open it on the. Let me just see.
Okay, I used to have it. Where did I put it? Okay, yeah, I have it now. It says Study Guide 2. I almost got it. But unfortunately, it said Study Guide 2.
Yes, Study Guide 2, I've got a soft copy.
You know, I wanted one.
I have it. Which page are you looking for?
I'm not sure of the page number. You can send it to me there. And I'm going to broadcast it here. All right, fine. Don't worry. I have it now. I have it now.
Okay.
Okay. So you see the buckets into which our costs are divided. Yes. Right. That's the bucket into which our cost can be divided. Okay, I'm just sharing the thing that I want to share. All right, I've got the study guide now. All right. Okay, let's see those buckets of ours. Right, classification of costs, good people. We have said that costs can be classified into 3 categories. Why am I skipping that one? Why am I not seeing that one? Okay, we talk about it there, fine. And then we come here, valuation of inventory. Why are we already today? Okay, here it is. Cost objects, classification and behavior, right? As you can see here, good people, costs can be classified in terms of their nature or origin. We see my screen there, right? Costs can also be classified according to their behavior, and costs can be classified into either product cost or period cost. Now, that's the thing that I want to explain. Right, if we are going to classify our costs in terms of their origin or nature, we are saying, where are they coming from? Now, as a management accountant, if you look at a company, if you look at a company, you should see two things there. You should see a factory as well as the admin buildings. That's what we have as a manufacturing company. A manufacturing company is going to have those two types of buildings. Some are going to be working in the factory. I don't know if those are the educated ones. Sorry, some are going to be working in the admin. I don't know if they are the educated ones. Some are going to be working in the factory. So a management accountant is going to look at a factory and see two things there. Not factory man, it's going to look at a company and see a factory and admin. After that, the management accountant is going to say now, the costs that are going to come from the factory, I am going to refer to them as what? As manufacturing costs, because all we know that happens in a factory is that there is manufacturing taking place. Right. And then if a cost is going to emanate from the admin, we are going to refer to that cost as non-manufacturing cost. On the admin side, that's where you find your marketing team. That's where you find your secretary, receptionist. That's where you find the CEO. So any cost that is going to originate from the administration side is going to be referred to as a non-manufacturing cost. And any cost that is going to originate from the factory, we shall refer to it as a manufacturing cost. Are we together with people? So yes, that's what we mean when we say cost can be classified according to their origin. In terms of their origin, cost can be classified into manufacturing costs and into non-manufacturing costs origin. These ones, they came from the factory. These ones, they came from the admin. Right, and costs can also be classified according to their behavior. Now, when we classify costs according to their behavior, this is what we mean, good people. According to their behavior, we are saying we are going to classify costs according to their what? Behavior towards changes in output, or rather toward their behavior and changes in the number of units produced. Are we together? Yes. Now, this is what is going to happen. Some costs are going to increase as the output increases. A good example would be these product costs, excluding the fixed component. Your direct material, good people, if we need 2 by 2 meters of wood to make one desk, to make 2 desks, we need 2 by 2 times 2. And those desks, I mean, like those wood, will be buying them at a cost. So it means that now, if we are going to increase, double the number of units produced, we are also going to double our direct material cost. We are going to double our direct labor cost. We are going to double our variable manufacturing overheads. So behavior, it is going to take us to say that now we have costs which are variable costs. Variable costs. Now these ones are going to what? To increase, or they are going to rather change as output changes. You vary your output, you change your output, these costs are going to respond accordingly. Meaning that now, if you increase your output, if you increase your number of units produced, these costs are going to increase. If you decrease the number of units produced, these costs are going to decrease. Hence, we call those costs variable costs. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay. Right, now let's move on to another one. We move on to another class, which is called fixed costs. Now, how do you think these costs are going to respond to changes in output? These ones, they stay the same, irregardless of changes in output, You increase your output, they stay the same. You decrease your output, they stay the same. I want examples here. E.g., rent, supervisor's salaries, supervisor's salary, depreciation. Now let's have examples here. I'll give example of manufacturing costs. We have got direct material, we have got direct labor, and we have got variable manufacturing overheads. So now, if you are going to look at this from the perspective of manufacturing costs, here I will talk about direct material, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overheads. On the fixed cost side, I am going to talk about what? Fixed manufacturing overheads. They stay the same. All right. So now here, when we talk about classification of cost in terms of their behavior, you can say that cost can be classified as either variable costs or fixed costs. Behavior towards changes in output. All right, but we have got another category, people, which we are going to say semi-variable as well as semi-fixed costs. But know the first two. Make sure that the first two, you don't have a problem with them. You know them like the back of your hand. And then the last two there, yes, we have them. They are less common in our exam, but we must know them. Now let's talk about the last two, good people. The last two now, their description is as follows. Okay, semi-variable cost. For a fixed cost there, you can go through those ones. Variable cost, you can also think about them. Now here is the semi-variable cost. Now what is the semi-variable cost? A semi-variable cost is also referred to as a mixed cost. It contains both fixed and variable cost component. The mixture of cost includes fixed amount within a relevant range of output and an amount that varies proportionately with output changes. I'll go there. Telephone cost is a good example. For a telephone cost, it can contain a fixed and a variable component, as well as your water bill. Right? Let's use the water bill, for instance. They can say the usage of 0 to 100 liters, you will pay a fixed rate of 200 rand. And then if you're going to use 100 rand, 100 liters and above, they can say that now for every 1 liter used now, you'll be paying 2 rand. So if we say, let's talk about this water bill. What type of a cost is it? We'll call it a semi-variable cost because it contains both the fixed element as well as the variable element. Okay. Now we then go on to look at a semi-fixed cost or a stepped cost. Right. Now they say certain kinds of fixed costs increase or decrease only in fixed increment or in steps. An example is a manufacturer's current production capacity at a cost of 15,000 per month is 10,000 units of a product, and the forecast demand is 12,000 units. The organization needs to increase its production capacity by 2,000 by buying an additional machine. However, the new machine's capacity is 5,000 units. Then they say the monthly operating cost of the new machine is 3,000. The cost to produce the first 10,000 units therefore is 15,000. And units 1,001 to 15,000 will be produced at a cost of 3,000, irrespective of whether 50, 2,000 or 5,000 units are produced. So now that's why they call it a stepped a semi-fixed cost or a stepped cost. It means that now we are going to be operating at a certain cost. But if our output goes beyond a certain number, we might have to increase our cost. Now, if this is the cost curve, this is our output and this is our cost. Our cost is going to remain fixed at that X amount if we are going to produce between 0 and that number of units. If our output increases beyond the X units, our fixed costs are going to increase a bit to that level. If again we go beyond the output X there, our fixed costs might increase as well. Those are called stepped costs. All right. So that's another classification. So these ones are less common, but we are going to see them when we talk about separation of cost. They will give you mixed costs that include both an element of fixed and an element of variable. Then they say dichotomize, split those costs, right? Now, there is the last classification of cost could be. That one, we are saying cost can also be classified into product cost or period cost. What do we mean by product cost or period cost? A product cost, good people, by now we must be knowing them. Those are costs that are incurred in the manufacturing process. So here they are, product cost now. If you're going to be classifying into terms of product or period cost. Now, a product cost is also referred to as the manufacturing cost. In our manufacturing cost, we now know them. Those are costs that are incurred in the manufacturing process: direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overheads. And as for our period cost, these are costs or expenses that are not included in the product cost. A good example could be a salary for the CEO, salary for the receptionist, a marketing costs. Those are what? Those are period costs. They are not included in determining the cost of a product. Altogether, they are referred to as period cost. In other words, those are time-based costs. They are incurred over time. But there's a danger to say that, because if I say factory rent, it is incurred over a period of time, normally on a monthly basis. So you might be tempted to say it is a period cost. No, it's not. So get the dichotomy between a period cost and a product cost. So in other words, period costs, these are non-manufacturing costs. All right. So now, good people, if a question is posed unto you, are you able to classify your cost into their origin according to their behavior, and in terms of either being a product cost or a period cost, and explain it in detail? Are we able to do that? Okay, are we able to classify our costs? Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
All right. So having spoken about classification of cost, good people, we can then look at some other classifications which are not part of that. So, but that one is more of the grouping of expenses. Where is that one? More of grouping our expenses. It's not the classification per se, good people. It's not the classification per se, but we are going to say now, our product cost can be further be categorized into following. Our product cost, we have said, is direct material. It is direct labor. And we have got our manufacturing overheads, which we said some are variable and some are fixed. Now, these cost good people, they can be categorized. The first two are referred to as prime cost. And this one and that one are referred to as the conversion cost. So here we are just categorizing our product cost. Now a question can come whereby they can say calculate the prime cost. You are simply going to add together your direct material cost and your labor cost. A question can come and say now, calculate your conversion cost. You are simply going to add together your direct labor cost and your manufacturing overhead costs. All right. Now, having said that, good people, you see that this module is about costs. I keep grinding you on cost, 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 and cost. The module is about costs. Now, let's say one wants to know what is a direct cost. A direct cost can be traced easily or physically to a particular cost object. An indirect cost cannot be traced easily or physically to a particular cost object. So those are some of the things that you might need to go through that. Now, my interest is here could be direct material. If I ask you what is direct material are all materials that can be identified as forming part of the individual finished product and can be included directly in calculating the cost of the product. I gave you a good example of direct material. In the case of a desk, that wood there that you can touch and feel, those frames there that you can touch and feel, they are referred to as direct material. A direct material, it is that material that forms the major part of the product. It can be touched and felt. What about direct labor? Direct labor is the work needed to convert direct material into an individual finished product. And then he said, when we talk about direct labor, we are talking about the labor. We are talking about the what? We are talking about the labor that is provided by those people who are involved in the direct manufacturing of the particular what product. A good example we gave we said that a carpenter. Okay. Then manufacturing overheads, good people. We are talking about things like what? Indirect material, indirect labor, and other manufacturing overheads. Now, what is indirect material? Indirect material, we spoke about things like what? Machine oil, we spoke about glues, we spoke about screws. Those are indirect. Those are materials, but they do not form the major part of the item being produced. And indirect labor, we spoke about the wages of what? Of workers. We are not directly involved in the manufacturing process. We gave a good example of a factory supervisor. He oversees the operation, but is not directly involved in the bending and cutting of material. Right. So this module is going to do mostly about costs. So we have covered the majority of our cost there. You can also see there that diagram, we already now know it, and we come to this activity there. Let's just put those things into numbers. I know we understand better when we talk about numbers than theory. They gave us a small activity. Tobacco manufacturers incurred the following cost: direct material, direct labor, as well as manufacturing overheads. Then they say calculate the what? The prime costs. So your prime cost, we said, is what and what, good people?
Direct material and direct labor.
Direct material 250K plus 150K. That gives us 100K. Calculate your conversion costs. Conversion cost, we said, is what and what, good people?
Direct labor and manufacture overheads.
250 plus 400. This gives us 550,000. Now, total manufacturing cost. Maybe you might say we didn't do it in class, but it is very simple. Or we did it actually. So what is the total manufacturing cost? This is the sum of all the manufacturing cost, could be.
Okay.
That's the sum of all the manufacturing costs.
Okay.
That is direct material, direct labor. So we are simply going to add those two: direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. You can go and get it there, or you can simply add A and B. So that gives us 800,000, 3, 4. So how come here, did I add incorrectly somehow? If I add D, how much am I getting? I get 3, 4, I get 800. So it means that my mates failed me somehow. They did. Oh, this is 750. This should be, if you add this, how much are we getting? 650.
650.
Okay. Oh no, if you can't add A and B, people, to get your total manufacturing cost, because your labor is double counted. It is found there and it is found there. So yes, you cannot simply say A and B is your total manufacturing cost. Now, you simply have to go there and add all the costs that are taken into account in determining the cost of the product. Right, there are your answers. Prime cost, they added. Conversion cost, they added. Then total manufacturing cost are all the manufacturing costs that were taken into account in manufacturing that particular product. So you have learned something, could be. All right. There is some other principles that we need to learn about. Okay. Another funny activity there that you might do. They say classify each of the following costs as either fixed cost, variable cost, or semi-variable costs. Okay. Okay, another good exercise. Now, a factory supervisor's salary, good people, is it fixed, variable, or semi-variable? What did we say? This is a fixed cost, good people. The supervisor's salary, we said, is a fixed cost. The paper that is used in the textbook production, our product in question is the textbook. The paper that is used there, people, okay, in the textbook there, the paper is going to form the major part of our textbook. It is going to be a direct material, and direct material is a variable cost. Factory insurance. Factory insurance is going to be a fixed cost. Screws used in the furniture production, it is going to be a variable cost, because if one desk, for instance, would need 5 screws, 2 desks will need 10 screws. You see that now, as we increase our output and our number of screws are going to be increasing as well. So now the cost of those screws is going to be a variable cost. Now, rent of a factory building, rent is going to be a fixed cost. You normally pay it per month. It's going to be a fixed amount per month, right? The piecemeal wages paid to workers assembling a product, wages of people who are involved in the manufacturing process, those are variable costs. We are talking about the direct costs, direct labor cost. The routine monthly maintenance of a machine and the 3 call-outs for breakdowns. That is going to be a semi-variable cost. The wood used in the furniture production. We are talking about direct material. And we say that direct material is a variable cost. So it is those things that we are going to be playing with all the way until we go and write our final exam. All right. Now we also need to look at some other other costing principles. It's only a few there. So these are the things that we need before we dive into our more topics there. For instance, we need to know what is a cost object. A cost object is a unit of production. Or in other words, a cost object, this is an activity whose costs are being accumulated. Right. In other words, I'm just using big words there. A cost object, this is a product being manufactured. Okay. That's a cost object. E.g., for a bakery, it could be a loaf of bread. For a furniture manufacturer there, it could be a desk, it could be a chair. That's a what? A product being manufactured. That's a cost object. So don't be intimidated now if I say a cost object. It just refers to a unit of production. All right. And another costing principle that you must know as a costing student is the issue of the relevant range. All right. A relevant range, you also need to know that one is defined somewhere here. What is a relevant range? A relevant range is normally defined as the production capacity, that is the number of units, within which the organization normally operates. That's a relevant range. In other words, this is the output levels within which an organization normally operates. Within this range, good people, within this range, comma, fixed costs are fixed. Or in other words, within that range, good people, fixed costs are going to be constant, right? If you are going to go beyond, if you're going to produce beyond your relevant range, you will realize that your fixed cost can become stepped a bit. It means that now you have went outside your relevant range. So if I say, what is a fixed cost? Now, to give me a more educated answer, if I say, what is a fixed cost? You would say that now, this is a cost that remains constant within the relevant range. Because if you are going to go beyond your relevant range there, your fixed cost can stand can tend to what? To increase a bit within the relevant range. Okay. So those are some of the costing principles. So people, with this little information that we have covered, we round off our learning unit, our topic number, okay? Topic number 1, learning unit number 1, it is done. You needed to know those simple things there. You need to know those simple things, right? So learning unit number 1, or rather topic number 1, start unit number 1, it is done. Now we spread our wings to learning unit number 2, but in learning unit number 2, good people, we are not going to finish today. We are going to cover half of it or a quarter of it. It says what? Estimation techniques and the linear equation. Right, we are moving on to learning unit, start unit number 2. Estimation techniques and linear equation. Now, in this learning unit, people, they just used a very big, they just used big terms there. But in this start unit, we are going to look at separation of mixed costs. Okay, now what is going to happen, or what we are going to learn here, good people, is that, remember we said when we classify our cost according to their behavior, you have your variable cost, you have your fixed cost, you have your semi-variable cost. Semi-variable costs are also referred to as mixed costs, right? So they've got an element of fixed and an element of variable. So in learning unit number 2, good people, we are going to say now, if you are given a mixed cost and we are required to calculate or to skin it, to dichotomize it into the variable element and the fixed element, you should be in a position to do so as a costing student. There are some techniques that are used, good people, to separate our mixed costs. So let's have that one down. Techniques used in separating mixed costs. Right, we do need to separate our mixed costs into our fixed and variable in decision making. Because why do we have to separate them? Because we want to know that now, okay, if we want to reduce our cost, we can only work on our variable costs. And say, we can only cut our variable cost. The fixed cost, unfortunately, they are fixed. There's nothing we can do about it. So if we are given a mixed cost like this, and we want to do our cost cutting, we say dichotomize those mixed costs into variable and fixed. And then we can work on our variable cost and see how we can reduce them. As for the fixed cost, there's nothing we can do about them. We just have to incur them. All right, so there are some techniques which we are going to use when we are given our mixed cost and we want to separate them. And the first technique is going to be the high-low method. People, this one, make sure you know it. It is going to follow you all the way up to your CTA, ITC, honors, degrees, PhD. High-low method. That's the most common method of separating mixed cost. I am going to explain it. Number 2, we have got the scatter diagram. This one, good people. No one can say prepare the scatter diagram. And then we have got number 3, simple linear regression. Simple linear regression. It's another way, it's another technique that we use to separate our mixed cost into variable and fixed. Right, this one, don't worry about it. No one can say separate your cost using the scatter diagram, no. But for a theory, they can say state the techniques that are used to separate mixed costs. You just state it in passing. All right, we move on now. Now we need to learn how to separate these mixed costs. Okay, I am going to start with the high-low method and tell you how it works in separating the cost. High-low method. Now, with the high-low method, good people, it is going to work like this. The high-low method is going to calculate the variable cost per unit first. Variable cost per unit first. Now, in using the high-low method, people, to separate our cost, what we are going to do, we are going to calculate the variable cost per unit first. After that, we are going to use the linear equation to determine fixed costs. Fixed cost. Remember, the fixed cost is not given as per unit, but it will be a total. All right, now a question will come there. Now, using the high-low method, good people, NP, using the high-low method, you have to what? Identify the highest level of output, and the lowest level of output and their respective costs. It means that now in the exam, we told that it costs this much to produce so many units, cost this much to produce so many units, cost this much to produce so many units, cost this much to produce so many units. What you are going to do, if you are required to split those costs using the high-low method, you are simply going to go to your output levels, identify two output levels, the highest output level and the lowest output levels. When we talk about output, people, output is determined in terms of number of units. Is determined in terms of number of units. Now, after you have identified your highest and the lowest level of output and their respective cost, good people, you can then now apply your high-low method. Step number one, calculate the variable cost per unit. Step number two, determine the fixed cost by applying your linear equation. You will learn about the linear equation shortly. All right. Now, how do we calculate the variable cost per unit? The variable cost per unit is determined as follows. Using the high-low method, we are sitting on the high-low method. We are going to say the difference between the cost at the highest and lowest level of output divided by the difference between the highest and lowest output level. When I talk about output, remember, I'm talking about units. When I talk about cost, good people, I'm talking about rands. So this is going to be the first step that you shall apply in order for you to split the cost using what? The high-low method. Like we said, that the high-low method will determine the variable cost per unit first before we proceed to determine the fixed cost. Fixed cost is not per unit. All right. After that, good people, after you've done your step number 1 in splitting costs, you're then going to apply your linear regression, your linear equation to calculate your fixed costs. Step 2, it is going to be apply linear equation to determine fixed costs. Fixed costs are not going to be given as per what? Per unit. Now, this is the linear equation. The linear equation, it says y is equal to a plus bx. All right, this is our linear equation. So when you're armed with your what? When you're armed, good people, with your variable cost per unit, you then come here, good people, and determine your fixed cost. Now, what is y? Y is the total cost. What is a? A is the fixed cost. What is b? B is the variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit. That you would have calculated in step number 1 there. That you would have calculated using your high-low method. And then what is our x now? Our x is the given level of output. Given level of output. Okay. Right. So no one is lost there, right?
No.
Okay. Now an exercise. These are techniques that are used to separate costs in instances whereby you are given mixed costs. Now, a simple exercise. Remember everything that I said about the high-low method. So we are going to use look at the high-low method, a method that is used to separate costs. So you should be able to separate costs in your companies where you're working. When you're given your mixed costs there, be able to separate them using the high-low method. Estimation techniques. All right. Now here is a nice activity. That activity 2.1. Right. This is what we have learned, good people. We can answer all of those questions. Now they said Duplex Limited incurred the cost as indicated below. During the 6 months ended 30 June, these costs changed, but not in direct relation to the volume. So these costs are changing, but not in direct relation to the volume. So in other words, these costs are not purely variable, because variable costs will change in direct proportional to what? To changes in volume. Now they give us the months there. The production observation was done over a period of 6 months. Number of units produced. We are saying that number of units produced in that column and the historic cost. Now, it cost 19890 to produce 98 units. It cost that much to produce 100 units. It cost that much to produce 105 units. It cost that much to produce 95 units. It cost that much to produce 104 units. It cost that much to produce 106 units. required. Use the high-low method to determine the variable cost per unit and the total fixed costs. Our required number one. And now, when you are using the high-low method, good people, in our NP there, in our notes, what is the thing that we must do? Go to NP there. We are told what to do when you are using the high-low method. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to identify? High-low method people, what do we do? Go to your notes. Before you can calculate your variable cost per unit and stuff like that, you need to do before we calculate, what do we have to determine? Go to your NP in your notes.
Identify the highest level of output and the lowest level
of the.
Yes, identify the highest level of output and the lowest level of output. Yes, before you calculate. So we come, output is measured in units. Which one is the highest level of output and which one is the lowest level of output?
106 is the highest, 95 is the lowest. Yeah, 95.
Highest
is the lowest,
okay.
98.
Okay, the highest is 106
95.
and the lowest is what?
95.
Oh, 95 years.
Oh, sorry. 95, isn't it?
Yes.
And we also have to identify their corresponding what?
Cost.
Okay. Then the rest of the information, when you're using the high-low method, people, it is not important.
Okay.
You just have to pick the 2 points, the highest and the lowest level of output, and then you ignore the rest. So now, in our calculations, we are going to say we have identified 95 units, cost, how much to produce, and we have identified 106 units, that cost, how much to produce. What are the respective costs could be? For 95, it's 1950, and for this one, it is 2060. We are interested in this one. That's why it's called high-low method. We have identified our highest level of output and the lowest level of output. The rest, we are not interested. Are we together, good people?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, step number one, we now need to calculate our variable cost per unit. And this becomes part of our required. Variable cost per unit, what is the formula?
It's going to be the highest minus the lowest.
Yes. The difference between the cost at the highest level of output, the cost at the highest level of output is this one, and the cost at the lowest level of output, which is this one, divided by the difference between the highest and the lowest level of output. How much is going to be our variable cost per unit, good people? It becomes per unit because we have divided the cost by the number of units.
110 divided by 11.
Yes, 110 divided by 11. Our answer?
10.
10.
Yes, 10. 10 rand per unit.
10 rand per unit, yes. All right. Now, that was the first part where they said calculate the variable cost per unit. Now we need to go and calculate our total fixed costs. Our total fixed cost, good people, we are going to use our simple linear regression. Total fixed cost. We are going to use our simple linear equation, which says y is equal to a plus bx. We want to calculate a, good people there. So what you are going to do, good people, in substituting there, you are going to just take any level of output that you feel like taking. You can take the lowest level of output, or you can take the highest level of output, and you go and substitute in your linear equation and solve for A. Which one do you want us to take? It will give us the same answer of our A. Do you want us to take the highest or lowest? Let's take the lowest, because it deals with small numbers that cannot confuse us. Now, if I'm going to use my lowest, which says that now to produce 85 units, 95 units, you need to spend 1950. Then I substitute. Y is the total cost. So I'll use the total cost for producing 95 units and say 1950 is equal to A. It is our fixed cost, the ones that I'm calculating. I don't know them yet. I'll put 9, A, sorry. I'll put A like that, plus B is the variable cost per unit that we determined first, which is 10 rand. And X is the given level of output. In this case, 95. Right. I come next here, say 1950 is equal to A plus 950. I take this one to that other side. It becomes 1950 minus 950 is equal to A. It means that 1000 is equal to A. Right, I'm allowed to rewrite this as A is equal to 1000 rands. So my fixed costs are equal to what? 1000 rand. So now, in each and every given level of output there, and the corresponding cost, or rather, in each and every cost that we are seeing there, 1000 part of it is representing fixed costs, then the rest is the variable element. All right, so now I have answered this part and I've calculated my total cost. I can go on to say now, let's go and answer B. B, it says, formulate the linear equation that explains and predicts the cost behavior. Now, what we do is we are simply going to substitute there. We know that Y is equal to A plus BX, right? So this linear equation that is going to be used to predict cost, this being the total cost, we are going to say total cost is equal to fixed cost, which is 1000 rand, plus variable cost per unit, which is 10 rand, times the given level of output. That's my P. I've answered my P there. Let's go to C. Now, so this linear equation is saying, people, that the total production cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost per unit multiplied by the number of units produced. Let's go to C. Now, C is saying forecast the total cost if an estimated 110 units are to be manufactured in July. Now we want to determine the cost of producing 110 units. I am going to use this linear equation, good people, that I formulated there. That linear equation that says total cost is equal to fixed cost plus the variable cost per unit times the number of units produced. I am required to calculate the cost of producing 110 units. So now the cost of producing 110 units is equal to fixed cost of 1000 plus 10 rand per unit times the number of units produced. Yes, so that will give me 1000 plus 1100. This is going to give me 2200. Yes, so now the total cost of producing
2100.
Oh, okay. So the total cost of producing 110 units, good people, is 2100. As far as our high-low method is concerned, good people, we now know it.
So they will also give you the number of units when requesting
Yes.
B. They have to give us.
When requesting C, right?
Oh yeah, they have.
C.
Isn't it B?
Yeah. B, they said formulate.
Formulate the linear equation.
Oh, okay.
And C, they say calculate. Yes. All right, so you're not going to worry about the scatter diagram, people. No one is going to ask you about that scatter diagram, meaning that the next thing that we are going to do, it is going to be our simple linear regression. Simple linear regression. It is another method of separating those costs. It is another method of separating those costs. We'll look at it in our next class. So for now, I can give you a homework whereby you will have to do self-assessment question number 1. You answer your A only. Don't do B. Don't do B. So you are going to do question 1, part A only. Okay. Now I think this was enough for day 1 of our class. I don't have to teach you too much information, you end up running away. So for today, let's end it here, good people. If you've got questions, we can ask and I'll answer them.
Okay.
All right. Assuming that there are no questions, I'm ending the class. If you think about any question, you can text it either to the group or text me, then we address it. Okay, people.
Thank
Sharp.
you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.